Lord of the Rings ends with the One Ring being destroyed. Sauron is defeated, and Middle-earth is saved. At least, that's how the movies tell it. But in Tolkien's book, the story doesn't end there. Because when Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin finally return home, after all the battles, all the sacrifice, all the darkness they've endured, they discover something far worse than they ever imagined. The Shire has fallen. Their homeland has been cut down, polluted and taken over. The peaceful life they fought to protect is gone. This is the chapter Tolkien called essential, the one he refused to remove even when every instinct of traditional storytelling said the adventure should already be over, and it's called The Scouring of the Shire. And understanding it reveals what The Lord of the Rings is truly about, because Tolkien didn't just write a story about defeating evil. He wrote a story about recognizing it at home, fighting it with your own hands, and rebuilding what was lost, even after the Great War has already been won. This is the part that changes everything. The Shire is, of course, one of the most beloved places in all of Middle-earth. Idyllic fields, warm hearths, birthday parties, second breakfasts. But Tolkien never meant it to be a flawless paradise. The Shire is peaceful, yes, good-hearted, yes, but it is also sheltered, insular, and often blind to the wider world. Hobbits gossip about strangers. They distrust change. They ignore danger if it lies beyond their hedgerows. Even in the first chapters of the Fellowship of the Ring, we see it. Suspicion of Bilbo's oddities, fear of wanderers, jokes about the big folk, and a general belief that the outside world can't possibly matter to them. And that is precisely the point. Tolkien builds the Shire as something worth loving, but also something deeply vulnerable, a place whose innocence can so easily become complacency. There won't be a Shire, Pip. Makes far more sense in the book than in the film, because Tolkien wants us to understand that the Shire's safety is just an illusion. It survives only because of others. First the kings of Arnor, then the Rangers, they've all guarded it in silence. And silence is a dangerous thing. The Hobbits believe danger will never touch them because danger has never had the chance, except for one wolf attack in the winter. Until now. The Scouring of the Shire is not just a plot twist. It is the moment Tolkien reveals the truth he has been hinting at ever since page 1. Evil doesn't care how peaceful you are. It comes whether you believe in it or not. And the Hobbits? Well, they are about to learn all about that the hard way. If the Shire feels real, it's because Tolkien didn't invent it from imagination alone. He remembered it. Tolkien grew up in the rural hamlet of Sackville, a place of watermills, fields, quiet lanes, and slow country life. It was his Shire, and then, almost overnight, it vanished. Birmingham expanded. Factories rose, smoke filled the air, the countryside he loved was swallowed by industry. To Tolkien, this wasn't progress. It was loss. Real, permanent loss. And that loss shaped everything he wrote. When Saruman tears down the trees of Isengard, when orcs march across green fields, when the furnaces of Mordor churn with ash and fire, Tolkien is remembering what happened to his world. And nowhere is this more personal than in the Scouring of the Shire. Houses torn down, trees cut, fields fenced, smoke rising from ugly new mills. It is Tolkien's childhood nightmare made real. Not through Sauron or grand armies, but through the slow, choking spread of petty greed and thoughtless modernization. The Scouring isn't just a plot event, it is Tolkien's grief on the page. The warning that even the most peaceful places can be ruined, not by a distant evil, but by the world right outside your door. And it sets the stage for the biggest revelation of all. The Shire didn't fall to an army, it fell to the kind of people that the Hobbits already knew. When the Hobbits finally reach their borders, they don't find orcs, they don't find ringwraiths, they find men. Ruffians, petty enforcers, the kind who bully, threaten, and obey whoever promises them power. And behind them, not a Dark Lord, but a familiar name. Lotr Sackville-Baggins. The Shire isn't taken by an army, it is taken by a greedy hobbit, one of their own, who buys up the land, hoards grain, exploits his neighbours, and sells the Shire piece by piece to outsiders. And when Lotr finally loses control, another voice steps in, a voice filled with bitterness, pettiness, spite. Sharky, Saruman reduced to a small, miserable tyrant. The great mastermind of Isengard becomes the architect of petty cruelty, tearing down homes, cutting trees, filling the air with smoke, and ruling through fear and bribery. This is Tolkien's brutal message. Evil does not always come in black armor. Sometimes it comes wearing a familiar face. The Shire didn't fall because Sauron targeted it. It fell because it was unprepared, unguarded, and unaware that corruption can grow anywhere, even in a quiet country lane. Ted Sandyman destroys the old mill because it makes him feel important. Lotho exploits his neighbours because he thinks wealth gives him power. Saruman oversees it all because cruelty is all he has left. Evil wins when ordinary people look away, and that is the truth the hobbits return home to discover. The greatest dangers are not always far away. Sometimes they're already inside your door. When the four hobbits left the Shire, they were inexperienced, uncertain, and quietly afraid of the world beyond their borders. Frodo was thoughtful, but unsure. Sam was loyal, but timid. Merry and Pippin were brave, but in the way only the untested can be. They set out as children of the Shire, sheltered, soft, and unaware of their own potential. But the hobbits who return after the War of the Ring are not the same people who left. They have stood before kings, they have led armies, they have walked through fire, shadow, and despair. And when they return to find their home conquered, cut down, and ruled by bullies, they do not break, they take command. Merry rallies the Shire. Pippin inspires resistance. Sam becomes a leader of the people he once served as a gardener. And Frodo, carrying the deepest wounds of all, chooses mercy where vengeance would have just been so easy. This is the moment their entire journey has been building toward. They are no longer hobbits who need protecting. They are the protectors. And the Scouring becomes their final test. Can they take the strength they gained from the great wars of the world and use it to save the place they most love? Their victory in the Shire is not an afterthought. It is the true emotional ending of their story. The moment they prove that innocence can be restored, not by hiding from evil, but by standing against it. The Shire is saved because its children have finally grown up. So to understand why Tolkien wrote The Scouring of the Shire, we need to look at how he saw evil, not as a distant force, but as something woven into everyday life. Tolkien once said that the Scouring was so important that he would never, ever remove it. And why? Because for him, the War of the Ring wasn't just a grand battle of light against darkness, it was a story about the responsibility of ordinary people to protect what they love. Defeating Sauron is magnificent, but defeating Sauron does not fix the world. Because the world is still full of those smaller evils. The greed, the spite, the envy, the petty cruelty, and the desire to dominate others in small, quiet ways. Lotho's corruption, Sandyman's bitterness, Saruman's vindictive spite, these are not grand villains. They are the evils of everyday life. And Tolkien knew these evils well. He served in the First World War. He lived through the Second. He watched his home change under industrial expansion, bureaucracy, and the slow decay of the simple beauty he cherished as a child. When soldiers returned from war, they did not return to a healed land. They returned to a damaged one, a place they now have to rebuild themselves. The Scouring of the Shire is Tolkien's way of saying, great wars may shape the world, but the real battle is restoring your home afterwards. It is the quiet struggle, the uncelebrated work of ordinary people picking up the pieces that defines where the goodness survives. And that message would have been lost if the story had ended at Mount Doom. The Scouring is not an epilogue. It is the moral centerpiece of the entire legendarium. It shows us that the Shire is not saved because evil is defeated far away. It is saved because the hobbits choose to fight for it, even after the Great War is won. And with that, with the Scouring of the Shire being one of the most powerful chapters Tolkien ever wrote, why wasn't it in the films? The reason isn't disrespect or misunderstanding or the belief that the scene didn't matter. The truth is, sadly, far more practical and a little heartbreaking. Peter Jackson knew that The Return of the King already had multiple endings. Frodo in Mount Doom, the destruction of the ring, Aragorn's coronation, the Hobbits' homecoming, the Grey Havens, with every one of those being emotional moments. Adding the Scouring on top of that risked breaking the pacing completely. Audiences were already feeling the pull of closure. Introducing a whole new conflict, new villains, new stakes, a new battle, it just would have felt like the film was starting again just as it was supposed to be ending. So from a filmmaker's perspective, Jackson made the choice. Focus on the global victory, not the local aftermath. But after removing the Scouring, Jackson still tried to honour the spirit of it. We have Frodo's line,
"It cannot always be torn in two."
Sam's heartbreak at the Grey Havens, the melancholy tone of the Shire when they return. All these reflect the idea that the Hobbits have changed and cannot simply go back to the way life was. The film preserves the emotional truth, but not the literal event. And something is lost in that change, there's no doubt about it, because the Scouring is the moment when the Hobbits became protectors, not passengers. It is where they prove that even the smallest people can fight for their own land, not just for the world at large. In the books, the story doesn't end with the destruction of evil, but with the healing of home. And without the Scouring, that final lesson, Tolkien's last and most personal message never fully reaches the screen. And so, there we have it. In the end, the Scouring of the Shire is not a side quest, or an afterthought, or an optional chapter of the book. It is the final truth of The Lord of the Rings, that evil is never defeated once and for all, and that even the smallest places can be scarred, and that the real courage comes from not just saving the world, but from coming home and making it whole again. Tolkien knew that victory is only the beginning of rebuilding, and the Scouring is his reminder that what we love most is always worth fighting for, even after the war is over. And with that, now it is your turn. Do you think the Scouring of the Shire should have been included in the films, or did it really work as a movie the way that Peter Jackson did it? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section down below. And along with that, if you would like to support the channel in other ways, please consider our Patreon. It would really help us out in that up and down world of YouTube. But with that, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.